Hi guys, Miss Sandell here. Time for the weekly lecture, and this week we're going to be continuing our discussion on American literary movements. We're going to be looking at a movement within a movement called Transcendentalism. This movement of Transcendentalism is actually part of the Romantic movement, and this one is a sizable movement within the movement, and that's why we're going to spend some time looking at it. First of all, on your handouts, it tells you that Transcendentalists are nature lovers, and I want to note that word there. These are not my words. These are words from a literary terminology dictionary, and one of the things I want you to note is that they really feel connected to nature for a number of reasons. And one reason is they believed that you could tap into something beyond you that transcended human experience when you were out in nature. And I hope since last week you've had a chance to get outside and just stop and think and sit somewhere and let the breeze mess your hair up and get some sunglasses on and let that vitamin D from the sun just kind of touch your skin if you're not allergic to it. There's just something beautiful about being outside and something that you don't get from being inside. And not that you can't think or connect or have personal revelations inside. There certainly is something to be said about being outdoors and being near nature, etc. Anyway, let's go to the list, shall we, about what Transcendentalism is. You can see the dates here, 1830 to 1860. This was the date that this movement was primarily happening, and as I've told you before, that date's only useful in so much as you understand the genesis, that this was a major movement during that time period. We see the effects of this in writing today and thinking today, okay? So I want to make that clear too. They had a reliance on intuition and the conscience, and I love this part because how many of you guys feel like that there is an intuition, that you have experienced this, like when that inner voice that tells you, for instance, not to do something, not to go somewhere, to leave a particular room. And they believed, if that's happened to you, then you'll know what you're talking about, that there's this intuition within us, there's this inner voice that we need to heed. And I also love this idea about the conscience and the idea of right and wrong. And one thing that they might suggest to us is that we already know, we're already equipped with an inner voice telling us what's essentially right and wrong. And here's what I'd say to you, whether you've had a philosophy class before or even an ethics class before, I want you to think about this. Do you believe that human beings already come equipped with a sense of right or wrong? Or do you think that those things have to be taught to us? Do we learn right and wrong from being spatted? Or is there within us an inner voice that tells us what's okay and what's not okay? And I think that's interesting. So on the discussion board, feel free to talk about that. I think that's a great point. They remind you here that this is a form of idealism. And what that means is it's an idealistic way of thinking. This isn't going to apply to everybody, and it certainly doesn't affect everybody the same way. But it is an idealistic notion. It's also a philosophical romanticism. And they tell you right underneath that it's also considered a literary as well as a philosophical movement. Now here's an important idea right under that, so be sure to underline this part. Within the nature of human beings, there was something that transcended human experience, an intuitive and personal revelation. I really like that. Some of the language here is very interesting. Look at the next thing. They believed in living close to nature and taught the dignity of manual labor. You know, I was raised this way. I was raised to believe that anyone who's working should be respected. As a matter of fact, when I was growing up, I would hear my father say things like, the person who's picking up trash on the side of the road is as important as the President of the United States. This is an important transcendental kind of idea. By the way, if you'll look down, these people are early proponents of democracy and women's rights because they believed that every person was valuable, that every person had the voice of God speaking within them. I'm not kidding. This is essential. And if we believe that every person is valuable, then why would we allow a system that looks down on somebody for doing a job that helps society? Somebody has to clean the bathrooms. Somebody has to pick up the trash. And this is what we're talking about. If you're doing manual labor, there should be a dignity and a respect that comes with that. I thank God every day that I was raised like that. In my family, we were not taught to look down or up. really. I mean, although we respect authority in my house, we were taught to respect everyone who contributes. And guys, I want you to think about that, because there aren't a lot of people, I think, that feel that way. So if this resonates with you, let me know. And if you've never heard anybody say that before, let me know. I love to read your discussion board posts. Let's keep on going. They felt a need for intellectual companionships. The Transcendentalists were people who often met in each other's houses, and they loved to talk about their ideas. And look at the next one. They emphasized spiritual living. Look at the next one. This next one needs to be underlined. Every person's relation to God was to be established directly by the individual rather than through a ritualistic church. This is key. Now, whether you or not you agree with this, I think it's a fascinating idea. And this really goes to their idea of spirituality here. The Transcendentalists, what you see here is a great resentment for people who just go and observe. Like, they sit in pews, they sing songs, they give maybe an offering, they do these things, but they're not changed by it, they're not informed by it, they're not passionate because of it. Ritualistic church means that you're just doing rituals. And this is essential. For them, it says your relationship to God should be established by you. So they really believed in personal responsibility, not just for your jobs, but for your spiritual relationship to God. That it's not someone else's job to make that connection to God for you. And also, just sitting on a pew for 4 hours a week or however many times isn't connecting. And I think it's a fascinating idea, don't you? Here's something that people find controversial today, but they believed human beings were divine in their own right. And they believed that that voice within us was coming from a source, just like they believed that creativity came from a source. And that source was within all of us. The voice speaking within all of us, they believed, was coming from a source, capital S-O-U-R-C-E. They believed in self-trust and self-reliance. They were to be practiced at all times, because to trust self was really to trust the voice of God speaking intuitively within us. Guys, I didn't write these notes. These notes come straight out of that literary dictionary. And so I just want to reiterate to you, this is how they believed. They believed that God spoke to each and every person. And if we listened, we could be better informed, and better able to make major decisions in our lives. They believed in democracy and individualism. And I love that. I don't know about you guys, but they believed in the value of each person's opinion. And that clearly, if we're all made differently, then individualism is not a problem, right? And that's romantic in nature. We talked about romanticism last week. Look at the next line here. Early advocates of the enfranchisement of women. Well, certainly they would be, because if the voice of God speaks to all of us, then why would we allow gender to create this hierarchy of who is worthy and who is not? And you guys can understand too that race would be something that they would get behind as well. Like, as for instance, why does it matter if God has breathed life into all of us, and if God speaks to all of us, then why would we make differentiations on something as silly as a person's skin color? I think that's a good question. The next thing it says is they believed human beings can intuitively transcend the limits of the senses and of logic and directly receive higher truths denied to more mundane methods of knowing. And they believed there was a connection with God that we all could tap into if we just listened and if we just allowed ourselves to. And one thing I want to talk about, we talked about our busy lives last week. And I want to say, for the Transcendentalists, it's important to get out in nature. Not just because it's nature, but because these are often places where we can think and we can meditate and we can connect and think deeper thoughts than perhaps when we're in Walmart. I don't know about you guys, but I can't remember a time I have a personal revelation when I'm at Walmart. The only revelation I get is, oh dear God, please get me out of here in one piece. As I'm dragging my plastic bag full of junk, one bag that cost me $100. Does anybody else feel like that? I mean, when you think about it, one of the things I love that they talk about is just the importance of getting outside, away from the busyness, away from all the noise, and just letting the breeze mess up our hair. And listening to the wind in the leaves. I've been sitting here now for about 40 minutes taping these videos for online classes, and one of my favorite sounds in the entire world is just the wind just tripping through those the leaves. And they're not green, by the way, they're those dead leaves, so they make that specific noise. You know what I'm talking about, that specific noise when the wind goes through them and rustles them. How long has it been since you've been outside to appreciate some of this? One thing I suspect is that in our lives today, we're not always comfortable with listening to the voice within, whatever the source of that voice within, whatever you think that source is. But sometimes people aren't comfortable with slowing down and thinking. Sometimes people aren't comfortable with thinking in general. And I want you to talk about that and discuss that on the discussion board. Hope you guys are having fun with this, and I look forward to talking to you next week, okay? See you later. Bye.